everybody. Welcome to another episode of Wellness Blueprints. I'm Jess Milner, and I'm so glad you're here to nourish your roots with me today. So, we have been talking about the different kinds of burnout and what we can do, and how it's like this burnout culture. It's like, a badge of honor to be like talking about how freaking tired you are all the time, and how really the burnout is a sign of things are just not in alignment. We are not prioritizing things properly. Like maybe it's a perimenopause ADHD snowball thing. Maybe it's just, one or the other, or it's just parenthood, or like your job is driving you nuts. So you got everything going on. But we have a tendency to keep going, and then we burn ourselves out and crash. So we've been kind of talking about that for the last couple episodes. And I'll tell you, it's actually a really, really popular topic right now. And I didn't even realize, and I had started to record these and everything and talking about it. And I'm noticing so many other people mentioning this as well. So like, this is a hot topic, and it should be, because this is something that's very, very serious. And I think it's really important that we all get back to our roots. We all nourish ourselves and knock this shit off, right? So one of the things that I was always told, and this is like, one of the reasons why I'm like, I was always like really frustrated with like, how come things don't work for me when you tell me to do stuff? Because people would always say, well, you have to set up a schedule. Like I've heard things like make a 6 most important list, and that worked for a little while. You have to have a schedule and keep to the schedule. And the thing is, for some stuff, sure, you need a schedule. There are some things where a schedule of some variety is necessary to keep things moving smoothly. But the problem comes in when you are so dead set on sticking to the schedule. And so many of us who have issues with perfectionism, we will make sure we stick to that schedule so that we can say, well, I kept my schedule perfectly. But keeping the schedule it's often leading to a burnout because time management is still not happening even with the schedule. Or we spend all this time making out the schedule, we follow it for a little while, and then we're like, nope, I'm bored with that. We're not going to do that anymore. So rather than giving yourself like a crazy schedule, just figuring out a plan, maybe for the week, for the day, some sort of a plan, and figure out what has to be done, what absolutely has to be done, and set up everything so that you can do those things because you need to be able to rest. And if we're just spending all of our time taking care of all the things and the things that pop up in the way, because, how many times have you had like a wrench thrown into plans, and sometimes something pops up that you absolutely cannot ignore. And then other times things are popping up that you totally can ignore. Okay. And I am guilty of that. All right. Like sometimes I'm like, well, it sure did make me feel better, but did I need to, redecorate the house with the new decorations for whatever holiday is coming up? Probably not. Now, if that's going to bring you joy, it's going to make you happy, and it's going to alleviate some stress, go right ahead and do it, because then that's going to be bumped up on the priority scale, right? But there are usually some things that we're like, oh my gosh, we should do this. And then we go and do that. And then we forget about all this crap that we were supposed to do. Probably because we don't want to do it. Because most of the time, the stuff that we are burdened with having to do, we don't want to do. It's boring. It's stressful, like you name it. Okay. So, but what we want to do is figure out what the priorities are. What is super important? What is urgent? Okay. Because like, that shit's going to have to get done. It's probably, what probably is urgent and important for me? It's probably making some damn phone call. I can't stand making phone calls. I'll call my girlfriend, I'll call my mom, I'll call my sister, but I'm not like just calling like a company for any reason. Even when it's going to be like the easiest thing, it'll probably take all of 5 minutes. Most likely it's a nice person answers the phone. I still don't like it. It probably comes from all of the trauma of having to call my friends' houses and speak to their parent as they went and got the phone. You guys know what I mean. If you are, I guess at least mid 30s, mid 30s, but like when we had, these landlines and you had to call and you're like, hi, Mrs. So-and-so is blah, blah, blah there. And how's school? La, la, la. Right. So I don't like making phone calls. So that's probably what it is for me. But whatever the case is, sometimes there are certain bills that need to be paid. There are certain deadlines you have at work. There's certain stuff that absolutely has to get done. Make this appointment for this kid, make this appointment for that. So there are usually things that are like, okay, like this has to get done. Okay. And then, remember that like, it's like 80% of the effects that you have from anything is really coming from like 20% effort. Okay. So, you can filter out the things that you don't really need to do. Okay. Because you don't need to put your effort into places that aren't going to bring the results that you need. So, like if you're putting your effort into like a new project, but the old one's still not done, this is something I have been, guilty of. I think we all kind of do this on some level, right? But that's going, you don't want to waste that energy, because here's part of the problem is that we're burning out. Okay. We don't have all the energy. Of course, when we're excited to do something, we feel like we have all of this energy, but then like we needed to do this other crap first. So you figure out that to-do list, and then you have to be okay and able to go, no, when somebody asks you to do something else, or if something else comes up that is not, sometimes, like I said, sometimes things come up that like, it's like, okay, that's going to overtake some of these other priorities. But that's not typically the case. So, it's okay to say no. Like, no, I can't do that today because I have to do all of these other things first. Okay. And then you're going to have like some things that it's like, do it now. Like don't procrastinate this. And that's where like that phone call thing comes in, like I procrastinated the phone call, and that's why now it's on the do it now urgent list. And then what are some things that like you're not going to do? Like maybe you are deciding that you're not going to like take your little social media, like scroll breaks and everything, make sure that you're not going to sit down and then realize that you would like a snacky s'more or a bevy and you got to go back to the kitchen. Listen, when you're sitting down to do your work, if you're going to need something to drink, you're going to need something to eat, grab those things, and then, set your little timer, like whatever these like little things are that you have to do, however long it should realistically take you to do that, set a timer that works for you. And then like put on some music, whatever you got to do, and just sit and do the damn work. And I know it's like so much easier said than done, but like sit and do the work, but set that timer, give yourself those breaks. And while you're on those breaks, remember to breathe. Okay. Is this going to be perfect for everybody? Absolutely not. And there are so many different like things out there for like time management, this, that, the other thing. And I'm not like super like stuck on any of them, because I know like so many people are going to be so different. So I want you to do what is going to align for you to help you at the end of the day. The goal is at the end of the day, you feel like you got some stuff done, you did things you were supposed to do, and you feel like you didn't like waste the day, or you didn't like, oh, like I big fat didn't do this again and now I'm going to get charged, whatever. At the end of the day, you want to feel like, okay, well, even though I didn't get some of these other things done over here, the things that were more prioritized, I did get those done. So and then allow yourself to be okay with what you got done, because whatever you still need to do the next day, you can prioritize from a new angle because now you've gotten those previous things done. So, and if you fall out of line with this and you mess up and you just, watch movies and scroll TikTok all day instead of, making that phone call, all right, don't beat yourself up. Let's make the phone call tomorrow now. Okay. So, like there's always going to be some wiggle room there. Listen to your body, make sure that like that things are feeling aligned. And if you are feeling super overwhelmed with everything, something's out of alignment. And sometimes just making yourself a little mini plan can help you get out of that, because it'll make you feel like you actually did something. So you'll be like, okay, well, I can give myself grace because I did this. And of course, the other side of this is making sure that we are feeling what's in our body and being aware of it, observing that, and letting go of anything that we don't need there. So there's a little example. I had last week, I had a scare. One of my kids choked on a strawberry. Everything was totally fine. But in the moment, of course, you go into this like complete instinct thing. So there's, no thinking involved or anything like that. But after the fact, I started to feel, shaky, kind of thinking about the what ifs and everything like that, and, that's when I started to realize, I'm like, okay, well, there wasn't any really like necessarily like new trauma, if you will, because everything turned out totally fine. But I could feel things swirling, like it brought something else up, and of course, my daughter had similar things happening for her because, she was the one who was in shock at the time and everything. So, but so I decided, I did for her too, but that's, I'm not going to talk about hers. I decided to do some body code for myself because I'm like, okay, I can really feel some of this here. And, it's surface level and everything, but hey, man, like we need to like move some of this energy, dig into this a little bit, just so I could kind of reflect on it a little bit more, observe a little bit more about what I'm feeling and maybe why. And so, I had a girdle meridian, which like, connects your upper and lower body, my low back on the right side, kind of, that it was just, there's an imbalance there, a disconnection going on. And, then had like a circadian rhythm aspect to it and as an associated imbalance, which makes sense because like that night after it happened, even though she was completely fine, I was having trouble falling asleep because I'm like going over my head. And I actually had to stop myself. Like I laid there and I was like, Jess, she's totally fine. This is ridiculous. We're going to breathe and go to sleep now. And that did work, but it didn't used to. So don't feel bad if just pep talking yourself out of an anxiety attack doesn't work, because it takes a lot of work to get to there. To get to that point where you can observe that and talk yourself out of it. But there were some inherited emotions. There was an emotion of indecisiveness, which was kind of interesting to me because in the moment there was no like thinking about stuff. It wasn't like I was indecisive on what I was going to do. I just kind of went into action, right? And then post-hypnotic suggestions, which come from like anything outside of us. It can come from like TV, media, movies, music, other people, so things like I hate everything and I'm not important, like those kinds of things would come up. And it just kind of helped for me to be able to observe, like, what is this feeling that I'm feeling? Release those pieces of it and everything so that, the actual feeling itself could come up. And I didn't have to do anything with it other than observe it and be aware that it is there, but by letting some of those other things go, it's calmed everything down. So now even when I think about the situation and everything, I'm not starting to get worked up and overwhelmed at the thought of what happened. So emotion code and body code are really, really amazing avenues to go to start to move through some of these things like this. And there's so much stuff that like we don't even know that like it's going to be there and it's going to have any effect on anything. But oh my gosh, I mean, like some I'm not going to sit here and tell like a jillion stories on this today because that's not the whole point of the topic of the show and everything. But some of the amazing stories. Maybe I should do an episode where I just talk about some different stories anonymously and everything, because this is really, really interesting work. So if that is something that you would like to try, because honestly, people do come to me and say, like, is there something like are there imbalances inside of me that are like keeping me from staying focused and doing this and doing that? Like, are there things that are, like I can't seem to manage this? Every time I turn around, I'm having an anxiety attack and things like that. And let me tell you, like this kind of work, it works. So it's fun. I mean, sometimes it can be very emotional as well. But if that's something that you would like to try, I would be so, so excited and happy to help you with that. So you're going to go to go.deeprootedwellnessid.com/ECBC. And you can go ahead and sign up for an emotion code or body code. And if you would like a freebie, please download my Quantum Path to Wellness. That's at go.deeprootedwellnessid.com/quantum path. And that is my gift to you. And I hope that you go ahead and download that. I hope that this was a helpful episode. All of these things that we can do to try and help ourselves work through the overstimulation, the overwhelm, the over anxiety and over analyzing everything. There are things that we can do with time management and with energy work. And of course, supplements supporting and nourishing our body with good foods and wholesome supplements. And, all of these things are so helpful in getting us back on our path to alignment, because that's what it's really all about. We want to be aligned with everything that we are doing. And so often life throws us all of these wrenches that gets us off of that alignment path. And that's when things start to really get wonky. So thanks so much for stopping by. Please leave me a great review. Share this with your friends, because I know there's somebody else who needs to hear all about this. If you're going to work with me with emotion code or body code, I can't wait to see you. And have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. And remember, burnout, it's not a culture, it's crap. All right? So get your rest, girl. All right. Love you. Bye.